This will change everything. Listen to this right now. Pause. Do not scroll. Do not move past this moment as if it were ordinary, because it isn't. Something deeper is happening right now. Something intentional. Something that has been trying to reach you long before this exact second. You may not realize it yet, but this moment has been set apart. Out of all the noise, all the distractions, all the endless things competing for your attention, you are here, right here, hearing this. And that is not random. That is not coincidence. That is timing. Divine timing. Because what you are about to receive was never meant to miss you. It was delayed, yes. It was blocked, interrupted, resisted by forces you couldn't see. There were moments when you were too distracted, too overwhelmed, too pulled in different directions to hear it clearly. Something kept getting in the way. Something kept pushing this message just out of reach. But even in the delay, there was purpose. Even in the resistance, there was a reason. Because now, in this exact moment, everything has aligned. The interference has been broken. The barrier has been lifted. Heaven has finally broken through. And the fact that you are hearing this right now means the delay is over. The waiting is over. This message didn't just arrive. It found you. It pursued you. It reached through every obstacle just to meet you here. So don't treat this lightly. Don't brush this off as just another video, just another voice. This is your moment to listen, to receive, to recognize that something greater is unfolding. You are not here by accident. You are meant to hear this. And what happens next depends on what you choose to do with it. And if you're honest with yourself, you've been feeling it for a while now. Not just recently, not just today, but in quiet moments you couldn't fully explain. There was a weight that would settle on your spirit without warning, a heaviness that didn't match your surroundings, as if something deeper was pressing against you from the unseen. You tried to shake it off. You told yourself it was stress or overthinking, or just one of those passing moods. But it lingered longer than it should have. It followed you into your stillness. It showed up when everything around you seemed calm, yet inside, something felt unsettled. That uneasiness wasn't ordinary. It wasn't random, and it wasn't without meaning. It was a signal. At the same time, confusion began to weave its way into your thoughts. Decisions that once felt clear suddenly became clouded. You found yourself questioning things you were once certain about. You felt pulled in different directions, unsure of what voice to trust, unsure of what step to take next. It was as if clarity had been dimmed, like a fog rolling in over your mind, making even simple paths feel uncertain. And in those moments, you may have blamed yourself. You may have thought something was wrong with you, that you were losing focus, losing direction. But what if I told you that the confusion was not a reflection of your weakness, but evidence of a deeper spiritual activity surrounding you? Because when something significant is about to shift in your life, clarity is often contested. There is resistance before revelation. There is pressure before alignment. And what you felt was part of that process. Then there were the nights, the moments when you tried to rest, but your spirit refused to fully settle. Your body may have been still, but your mind remained active, your soul alert in ways you couldn't quite understand. Maybe you experienced dreams that felt different, not just random images, but scenes, emotions, impressions that stayed with you long after you woke up. Dreams that felt like they were trying to tell you something, even if you couldn't fully interpret them. And even when you couldn't remember the details, you woke up with a feeling, a residue, a sense that something had taken place beyond your conscious awareness. Those were not meaningless fragments of imagination. Those were moments where your spirit was more open, more receptive, more aware than your waking mind allowed. And beyond the dreams, there were whispers. Not always in words, not always loud or clear, but subtle nudges, impressions, instincts that seemed to rise up from within you. A feeling telling you not to go somewhere, not to trust something, or to pause before making a move. A quiet urging to pay attention, to reconsider, to step back. And sometimes you ignored it. Sometimes you brushed it aside because it didn't make logical sense, because it didn't align with what you thought you wanted. But those whispers didn't come from fear. They came from protection. They came from a place beyond your own limited perspective, guiding you, warning you, trying to keep you aligned with something greater than what you could see in the moment. And when you look back now, there were likely times when you wished you had listened. Moments when that inner voice was right, even when it didn't seem clear at first. Moments when you felt a hesitation you couldn't explain, and later realized it was trying to save you from something you weren't meant to walk into. That is not coincidence. That is not luck. That is guidance. The truth is, your spirit has been in communication this entire time, even when your mind was distracted, even when your environment was loud, even when you felt disconnected. Something deeper within you was still receiving, still sensing, still responding to what was being sent your way. You were not abandoned in your confusion. You were not left alone in your heaviness. You were being reached. You were being warned. You were being protected. But because the language of the spirit is not always loud or obvious, it's easy to overlook it. It doesn't always come with clear instructions or undeniable proof. Sometimes it comes as a feeling you can't shake, a thought that repeats, a sense of knowing that doesn't have a visible source. And in a world that teaches you to rely only on what you can see and logically explain, those signals can feel uncertain, even uncomfortable. But that doesn't make them any less real. In fact, it makes them more important to pay attention to. Because what you felt was not chaos. It was communication. It was not instability. It was alignment, trying to break through layers of distraction and noise. Every moment of uneasiness, every wave of confusion, every strange dream, every quiet whisper, was part of a larger attempt to reach you, to redirect you, to prepare you for what is ahead. Heaven was not silent. It was speaking in ways you are now beginning to recognize. And now that you are here, now that you are aware, those signs begin to make sense. The heaviness was a warning. The uneasiness was a signal. The confusion was a disruption of what was not meant to remain. The dreams were messages. The whispers were guidance. None of it was random. None of it was wasted. It was all intentional, all purposeful, all designed to keep you from going too far in the wrong direction, and to gently pull you back toward where you are meant to be. And this is where your understanding begins to shift. Because instead of seeing those experiences as burdens, you begin to see them as evidence that you are not disconnected, but deeply connected. That you are not lost, but being guided. That you are not alone, but being watched over in ways that go beyond your immediate awareness. What you felt was not something to fear. It was something to recognize. Because when heaven is trying to reach you, it will not always come in ways that are easy to interpret, but it will come in ways that are undeniable over time. And now, in this moment, you are starting to see it. You are starting to understand that what you experienced was not random emotion, not scattered thoughts, not meaningless dreams. It was a pattern of communication, a pattern of protection, a pattern of guidance that has been unfolding around you this entire time. And the fact that you are now aware of it means you are no longer moving blindly. You are beginning to see with a different kind of vision, one that goes beyond the surface, one that recognizes that there is more happening than what meets the eye. And this awareness changes everything. Because once you understand that those signs were real, that they carried meaning, that they were sent with intention, you can no longer ignore them in the same way. You begin to listen differently. You begin to move more carefully, more intentionally. You begin to trust that inner knowing that once felt uncertain, and in doing so, you step into a deeper alignment with the path that is unfolding before you. This is not confusion anymore. This is clarity beginning to form. This is not heaviness without purpose. This is weight that was meant to wake you up. This is not randomness. This is divine communication finally being recognized for what it truly is. But to truly understand why all of this felt so intense, so confusing, so drawn out, you have to look beyond what was happening within you and begin to recognize what was happening around you. Because there was opposition. Not random resistance, not coincidence, but intentional interference. There was something working against your clarity, something deliberately trying to keep you from arriving at this moment of understanding. And whether you realized it or not, you were in the middle of a quiet battle, one that didn't always show itself openly, but made itself known through pressure, through distraction, through the constant pull away from stillness and awareness. This is where the strategy becomes clear. It wasn't about stopping you completely. It was about delaying you just long enough for you to doubt yourself, long enough for you to miss certain signals, long enough for confusion to settle in where clarity was supposed to rise. Because if you had received this message earlier, if you had fully understood what was happening around you sooner, you would have moved differently. You would have made different decisions. You would have avoided certain situations that drained you, certain connections that pulled you out of alignment. And that is exactly what the opposition was trying to prevent. So instead of confronting you directly, it distracted you. It filled your environment with noise, constant activity, endless thoughts, competing priorities, anything to keep your attention scattered. Because a distracted mind is a disconnected mind. And when your attention is divided, it becomes harder to hear what is subtle, what is quiet, what requires stillness to be understood. Then came the exhaustion. Not just physical tiredness, but a deeper kind of fatigue that affected your motivation, your focus, your ability to stay present. You may have noticed how difficult it became to concentrate on what truly mattered, how easily your energy was drained even by small things, how your mind felt overloaded, as if you were carrying too many thoughts at once, unable to sort through them clearly. That wasn't accidental. Because when you are mentally overwhelmed, your capacity to discern is weakened. You begin to react instead of reflect. You begin to move out of habit instead of intention. And in that state, it becomes easier to miss what is important, easier to overlook what is being shown to you. And then there was the confusion, the subtle distortion of clarity, the constant second-guessing, the internal conflict, the feeling of being pulled in opposite directions. This is one of the most effective forms of interference because it doesn't feel like an external attack. It feels like it's coming from within you. It makes you question your own instincts, your own perception, your own sense of direction. And when that happens, you begin to hesitate. You begin to delay your own progress, not because you lack ability, but because you lack certainty. But here is the truth that changes everything. None of this was random. None of it was just life being difficult. It was strategic. Because there was something about your clarity that was dangerous to the opposition. There was something about your awareness, your ability to see, to understand, to recognize what was real and what was not, that posed a threat. Your awakening was not just about you feeling better or becoming more peaceful. It was about you stepping into alignment, into purpose, into a level of discernment that would prevent you from being easily misled or manipulated. And once you reach that level, certain patterns can no longer hold you. Certain influences lose their power over you. Certain cycles are broken permanently. That is why the delay mattered so much. Because as long as you remained distracted, exhausted, and confused, you were easier to influence, easier to redirect, easier to keep in cycles that no longer served you. But the moment clarity enters, everything begins to shift. And that is what this message carries. Clarity, direction, awareness. It reconnects you to what you were starting to lose sight of. It reminds you of what you already sensed but couldn't fully articulate. It brings into focus what was previously blurred by noise and pressure. And that is exactly what the opposition was trying to prevent. But here is the turning point, the part that changes the entire narrative. It didn't work. Despite the distractions, despite the exhaustion, despite the confusion, you are here. You are hearing this now, which means the delay was temporary, not permanent. It means the interference was strong, but not strong enough. It means that no matter how much was placed in your path to slow you down, it could not stop what was meant to reach you. And that realization is powerful, because it shifts your perspective completely. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who was lost or off track, you begin to see yourself as someone who was pursued, someone who was being reached for, even in the middle of resistance. Someone whose path could be delayed, but not denied. The enemy's strategy was to buy time, not to win, to create enough interference to keep you from arriving at this moment when it mattered most. But time has limits. Interference has limits. And now, that time is up. That strategy has reached its end. Because clarity has found you anyway. And once clarity arrives, it begins to undo everything that confusion tried to build. It begins to restore what distraction pulled apart. It begins to strengthen what exhaustion weakened. And you start to feel it, that shift, that subtle but undeniable change in your awareness. Things begin to make sense in a way they didn't before. You begin to see patterns you couldn't recognize before. You begin to understand why certain things happened the way they did, why certain delays occurred, why certain paths didn't open when you expected them to. It wasn't because you were being rejected. It was because you were being protected and redirected, even when you didn't have the clarity to see it at the time. And now, that clarity is here, not partially, not faintly, but strongly, intentionally, unmistakably. And with it comes a new level of responsibility. Because once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you understand, you cannot return to the same level of awareness you had before. This is where everything begins to change, not just externally, but internally. Your decisions begin to shift. Your focus becomes sharper. Your sensitivity to what is right and what is not becomes stronger. And the same strategies that once worked to distract or confuse you begin to lose their effectiveness. Because you recognize them now. You see through them. You are no longer moving unconsciously. You are moving with awareness. And that awareness is what the opposition feared the most. Not your strength, not your potential, but your clarity. Because clarity leads to alignment. Alignment leads to purpose. And purpose is what breaks cycles, what changes direction, what moves you into a completely different trajectory. That is why the message was delayed. Not because it wasn't meant for you, but because it was too important to reach you without resistance. But now that it has reached you, everything shifts. The delay is over. The interference has been broken, and the very fact that you are still here, still listening, still receiving, is proof of something greater at work. Proof that what is meant for you will find you, no matter how much stands in the way. And that means something powerful. The enemy didn't win. It never had the final say. It only delayed the moment, but it could not stop it. And now that the moment has arrived, you are no longer the same person you were before it. You are aware. You are aligned. And you are ready to move forward with a clarity that cannot be taken from you again. And now you begin to understand something even deeper, something that explains why everything felt so intense without having a clear, visible cause. There was a battle happening around you, one that didn't announce itself in obvious ways, one that didn't always leave visible evidence, but one that you felt in your spirit again and again. This was not just stress. This was not just a difficult season. This was an invisible battle, a form of spiritual warfare that operated beneath the surface of your daily life, influencing how you felt, how you thought, and how you moved, even when you couldn't fully explain why. You may not have seen it with your eyes, but you experienced it through your energy, your emotions, your sense of inner stability. And that is why it was so confusing, because there was no clear source to point to, no obvious reason to justify the intensity of what you were feeling. But that doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it makes it even more important to recognize. Because when something operates unseen, it often goes unaddressed. And when it goes unaddressed, it continues longer than it should. And that is exactly what was happening around you. There were days when you felt drained in a way that didn't match your physical activity. You hadn't done anything particularly exhausting, and yet your energy felt depleted, your motivation low, your spirit heavy. It was as if something had been pulling from you, taking more than you realized, leaving you with just enough strength to get through the day, but not enough to feel fully present, fully alive. And you may have tried to explain it logically. You may have blamed your schedule, your responsibilities, your lack of rest. But deep down, there were moments when you knew it was something more. Because the exhaustion didn't feel normal. It felt targeted. It felt like it came in waves, especially when you were getting close to clarity, close to peace, close to making a decision that would move you forward. And then there were the nights. The times when you were supposed to rest, to recover, to find peace, but instead, something felt off. You may have experienced restless sleep, waking up at unusual hours, feeling uneasy without a clear reason. There may have been nights where your dreams felt intense, almost confrontational, leaving you with emotions that lingered long after you opened your eyes. Or nights where you woke up feeling more tired than when you went to sleep, as if your rest had been interrupted on a level deeper than the physical. And in those moments, it was easy to dismiss it, to tell yourself it was just your mind processing things, just your body reacting to stress. But what you were experiencing was not just physical or mental. It was spiritual. Because in moments of rest, your defenses are lower, your awareness shifts, and that is often when unseen battles become more noticeable, even if they are not fully understood. And beyond the exhaustion and the restless nights, there was something else, something quieter but just as significant. A sense of disconnection, a feeling of distance between you and the peace you once knew, between you and your sense of clarity, your sense of direction, your connection to something higher. It may not have happened all at once. It may have been gradual, subtle, almost unnoticeable at first. But over time, you began to feel it. Moments where it became harder to focus inward. Moments where the stillness you once found comfort in now felt empty or distant. Moments where you questioned whether you were still aligned, still connected, still on the right path. And that disconnection can be one of the most difficult parts of this kind of battle, because it makes you feel isolated, as if you are navigating everything on your own, without guidance, without support. But here is what you need to understand. You were never truly disconnected. The feeling of distance was part of the battle, not the reality of your situation. Because when opposition cannot completely stop you, it will try to convince you that you are alone, that you have lost your connection, that you are no longer guided. It creates an illusion of separation, even when the connection is still there. And if you believe that illusion, it becomes harder to reach for the very guidance that is still available to you. That is why this awareness matters so much. Because once you recognize that what you were experiencing was part of an unseen battle, it changes how you interpret those moments. You stop blaming yourself for the exhaustion. You stop questioning your worth because of the disconnection. You stop seeing the struggle as a personal failure and begin to see it as resistance to something valuable within you. And this is where validation becomes important. Because everything you felt was real. The heaviness, the fatigue, the restlessness, the disconnection. It was all real. You were not imagining it. You were not overreacting. You were responding to something that was affecting you on a level deeper than what could be easily explained. You felt it, even if you didn't see it. And that matters, because your ability to feel it means your awareness was active, even when your understanding was still forming. It means you were not completely unaware. You were sensing something was off, even if you couldn't define it. And that sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is what allows you to recognize shifts before they become obvious, to sense misalignment before it becomes visible. And now, as everything begins to come together, you can see the pattern more clearly. The moments of exhaustion weren't random. They came when you were being pulled away from your focus. The restless nights weren't meaningless. They were moments where your spirit was engaged in something beyond your conscious awareness. The disconnection wasn't permanent. It was a temporary distortion meant to make you doubt what was still true. And when you put all of that together, you begin to see that there was a consistent effort to keep you from reaching this point of clarity, this point of understanding, this point where everything starts to make sense. But here is the shift, the part that changes everything moving forward. Now that you see it, it loses its power to confuse you. It loses its ability to make you question yourself in the same way. Because awareness changes how you respond. Instead of absorbing everything without understanding, you begin to observe it. You begin to recognize when something feels off, not as a sign that something is wrong with you, but as a signal that something is happening around you. You become more grounded, more intentional, more aware of your internal state and what influences it. And that awareness becomes a form of protection. Because when you know what you are facing, you are no longer navigating blindly. You are no longer reacting without understanding. You are moving with insight, with clarity, with a deeper connection to what is real and what is not. And that is what shifts the dynamic completely. The battle may have been invisible before, but now it is recognized. And once something is recognized, it can no longer operate in the same hidden way. It can no longer confuse you in the same way, drain you in the same way, disconnect you in the same way. Because now you understand. Now you see. And that means you are no longer just experiencing the battle. You are rising above it. And this is where everything begins to turn. Not gradually, not uncertainly, but decisively. Because after the delay, after the resistance, after the confusion and the unseen battle, there comes a moment where the balance shifts. A moment where what was held back can no longer be held back. Where what was postponed can no longer be postponed. Where what was meant for you begins to move toward you with a force that cannot be interrupted again. This is that moment. This is the point where divine acceleration begins. Because heaven does not operate on the same limitations as delay, and what may have been slowed down in one season is not cancelled. It is simply repositioned for a greater release. And now, that release is happening. What was delayed is now being accelerated. Not partially, not cautiously, but intentionally and completely. The things that felt distant are coming into reach. The understanding that once felt unclear is becoming sharp and undeniable. The direction that once felt uncertain is now being illuminated with precision, and you can feel it, even if you can't fully explain it yet. There is a shift in your awareness, a movement in your spirit, a sense that something is no longer stuck the way it used to be. Because when divine timing takes over, it does not move slowly to make up for lost time. It moves with purpose, to fulfill what was always meant to happen. And with that acceleration comes the arrival of three things that change everything: warning, clarity, and breakthrough. The warning comes first, not to create fear, but to bring awareness, to show you what you could not see before, to reveal what was hidden beneath distraction and confusion. It sharpens your discernment, allowing you to recognize patterns, behaviors, and situations that no longer align with where you are being led. It gives you the ability to pause before stepping into something that would have pulled you backward, to recognize when something familiar is not meant for your future. This warning is not a limitation. It is protection. It is guidance, designed to keep you from repeating cycles that were never meant to continue. And now that it has arrived, you are no longer moving without awareness. You are moving with insight, with understanding, with the ability to see beyond the surface. Then comes the clarity. Not the kind that flickers in and out, not the kind that leaves you questioning, but a steady, grounded clarity that settles into your spirit and remains. It is the kind of clarity that answers questions you didn't even know how to ask, the kind that connects pieces of your past, your present, and your future in a way that suddenly makes sense. You begin to understand why certain things didn't work out, why certain doors closed, why certain delays occurred. What once felt like confusion now reveals itself as alignment in progress. What once felt like rejection now reveals itself as redirection. And this clarity doesn't just stay in your thoughts, it influences your actions. It changes how you respond, how you decide, how you move forward. It removes hesitation and replaces it with confidence. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust what has been revealed to you. And then, with warning and clarity in place, the breakthrough arrives. Not as a distant hope, but as a present reality. Because breakthrough is not just about external change, it is about internal shift. It is the moment where something within you unlocks, where resistance loses its grip, where the weight that once held you down begins to lift. It is the moment where you step out of confusion and into alignment, where you move from uncertainty into purpose. And once that breakthrough happens, everything begins to move differently. Opportunities align in ways they didn't before. Decisions become easier to make. Your energy shifts from drained to directed. You're no longer pushing against resistance. You are moving with momentum. And that is what divine acceleration looks like. It is not chaotic or rushed. It is precise. It is intentional. It is aligned with a timing that goes beyond what you could have planned on your own. Because this is the shift from delay to divine timing. And there is a difference between the two that changes everything. Delay feels like stagnation, like being held back, like nothing is moving no matter how much effort you put in. It creates frustration, doubt, and sometimes even the temptation to give up or settle for less than what you know you are meant for. But divine timing is different. Divine timing is not about holding you back. It is about positioning you correctly. It is about ensuring that when things begin to move, they move in a way that is sustainable, aligned, and purposeful. It ensures that you are ready for what you are stepping into, that you have the awareness, the strength, and the clarity to handle what is coming next. And now, you are stepping into that timing. The delay served its purpose. It revealed what needed to be seen, removed what needed to be removed, prepared what needed to be prepared. but it was never meant to last forever. And now that it is ended, what follows is not more waiting, it is movement. Forward movement. Accelerated movement. Movement that brings you closer to what has been waiting for you all along. And this is why this moment matters so much. Because you are not where you were before. You are not moving in the same uncertainty, the same confusion, the same lack of direction. You are moving with something new, something stronger, something clearer, something that cannot be easily shaken. You are moving with awareness. You are moving with alignment. You are moving with the understanding that what is happening now is not random, but intentional. And that changes how you approach everything that comes next. You no longer chase what is not meant for you. You no longer hold on to what has already been removed. You no longer question every step you take. Instead, you begin to move with confidence, with trust, with a sense of purpose that was not fully accessible to you before. Because now, you know that what was delayed was not denied. You know that what was held back is now being released. You know that what once felt out of reach is now being brought closer, not by chance, but by design. And that realization creates a shift, not just in your circumstances, but in your mindset, your perspective, your entire approach to the path ahead. This is not the same journey anymore. This is a new phase, a new level, a new alignment that is unfolding in real time, and you are not waiting for it. You are stepping into it, right now. And now, as clarity settles deeper into your awareness, you begin to reinterpret something that once felt overwhelming, something that once made you question yourself more than anything else. The pressure. That constant, unrelenting pressure that seemed to follow you no matter where you went, no matter what you tried to do to escape it. At the time, it felt personal. It felt like something was wrong with your life, your decisions, your direction. You may have looked at your job, your relationships, your finances, your environment, trying to pinpoint the source of it. You may have convinced yourself that if you could just fix one area, if you could just change one situation, the pressure would lift. But no matter what you adjusted, no matter what you tried to control, the pressure remained. And that's because it was never rooted in those external circumstances to begin with. It wasn't about what was happening around you. It was about what was happening within you and for you on a level you couldn't yet see. That pressure was spiritual. It was not designed to break you, even though it felt heavy enough to do so at times. It was designed to build you, to reshape you, to prepare you for a version of yourself and a path that required more than what you had previously been operating in. What you were experiencing was not chaos. It was construction, divine construction. And like any form of construction, it is not always comfortable, it is not always quiet, and it is not always easy to understand when you are in the middle of it. Because when something is being built or rebuilt, things have to be torn down, adjusted, removed, and realigned. And from the inside, it can feel like everything is falling apart, even when it is actually coming together in a more precise and intentional way. This is why the pressure felt so intense, because you were in a process of transformation that required change at a deeper level than surface adjustments. God was working in places you could not access directly, rearranging elements of your life that were not aligned with where you are being led. And that kind of work does not happen without friction. It does not happen without resistance. It does not happen without moments of discomfort that force you to grow beyond what is familiar. One of the ways this construction showed up was through closed doors. Opportunities that once seemed promising suddenly became unavailable. Paths you thought would open remained shut, no matter how much effort you put into them. At the time, it may have felt like rejection. It may have felt like failure, like missed chances, like things not working out in your favor. But those closed doors were not losses. They were protection. They were boundaries being set on your behalf, preventing you from stepping into spaces that were not meant to support your next level. Because not every opportunity is aligned, and not every open door leads to where you are supposed to go. Sometimes, the most important guidance comes through what does not happen, through what is blocked, through what is denied. And now, with this new perspective, you begin to see that those closed doors were not signs that you were off track. They were signs that you were being redirected onto a path that required different conditions, different environments, different alignments. And alongside those closed doors, there was another shift that may have been even more difficult to process. People being removed from your life. Connections that once felt strong began to change. Conversations became different. Distances grew where closeness once existed. And in some cases, people left entirely, whether gradually or suddenly. And that kind of change can feel deeply personal. It can make you question your value, your actions, your role in those relationships. It can create a sense of loss, confusion, even loneliness. But what you did not fully see at the time was that not everyone is meant to go with you into every season of your life. Some people are aligned with who you were, not who you are becoming. And when growth begins, when transformation starts to take place, those alignments naturally shift. It is not always about conflict or failure. Sometimes it is simply about purpose. Because in order for you to move forward, certain influences have to be removed. Certain dynamics have to change. Certain connections have to loosen or end completely. And while that process can feel painful, it is also necessary. Because what remains and what enters your life next must be in alignment with the direction you are moving in. And then there were the moments where things were revealed, subtle at first, but undeniable over time. Situations that once seemed stable began to show cracks. Behaviors that once went unnoticed became clear. Intentions that were hidden started to surface. And what you once accepted without question began to feel different, to feel off, to feel misaligned. This was not your imagination. This was exposure. God was allowing you to see what had been there all along but was previously hidden from your awareness. Because you cannot move forward effectively if you are still connected to what is not genuine, what is not supportive, what is not aligned with your growth. And exposure is not always comfortable. It can be unsettling to realize that something you trusted is not what you thought it was. But it is also freeing. Because once something is revealed, it can no longer control you in the same way. It can no longer operate without your awareness. You gain the ability to make informed decisions, to set boundaries, to step away from what no longer serves you. And finally, there was the pruning. The quiet, often unnoticed process of removing what is unnecessary, what is unproductive, what is holding you back from growing into your full potential. Pruning is not about punishment. It is about refinement. It is about creating space for stronger, healthier growth. And in your life, that pruning showed up in different ways. Habits that no longer aligned with your direction began to feel uncomfortable. Patterns that once felt normal started to feel restrictive. Ways of thinking that once made sense began to feel limiting. And you may have resisted it at first. You may have tried to hold on to what was familiar, what was comfortable, what felt safe. But the pressure made it clear that you could not remain the same, that you could not carry everything with you into the next phase of your journey. Something had to change. Something had to be released. Something had to be refined. And that is what was happening, even when you didn't have the language for it. You were being shaped. You were being prepared. You were being aligned with something greater than what you could see at the time. And through all of this, there is one message that you need to hold on to, one truth that redefines everything you went through. Nothing was wrong with you. Not your sensitivity, not your confusion, not your reactions to what you were experiencing. You were not failing. You were not falling behind. You were not incapable. You were in the middle of a process that required pressure to bring about change. And that pressure was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of transformation. It was evidence that something within you was being strengthened, expanded, elevated. And now, as you step out of that phase and into a new level of clarity, you can see it differently.
You can see that what once felt like everything was falling apart was actually everything being put into place. You can see that what once felt like loss was actually preparation. You can see that what once felt like confusion was actually a transition between who you were and who you are becoming. And that realization changes how you move forward. Because now, instead of fearing pressure, you understand its purpose. You recognize that when it appears, it is not there to destroy you, but to develop you. It is not there to stop you, but to shape you into someone who is ready for what is next. And that understanding gives you strength. It gives you confidence. It gives you the ability to trust the process, even when it is not easy, even when it is not comfortable, even when it requires you to let go of what you once thought you needed. Because now you know, nothing was wrong with you. Everything was being worked on for you. And now, with everything that has been revealed, everything that has been uncovered and understood, there comes a warning, clear, direct, and not to be taken lightly. This is not a suggestion. This is not something to consider casually and set aside. This is a line being drawn, a boundary being established for your protection and your future. Do not return to what God removed from your life. Do not go back to the places, the people, the patterns that you were pulled out of, even if they feel familiar, even if they seem comfortable, even if part of you still feels connected to them. Because what was removed was not taken from you to harm you. It was removed to protect you, to free you, to create space for something better aligned with who you are becoming. And this is where the test begins. Because even after something has been removed, the emotional attachment does not disappear instantly. The memory remains. The familiarity remains. The feelings may still rise up at unexpected moments, trying to pull you back into what once felt known, what once felt safe, what once felt like a part of your identity. And that pull can be strong. Strong enough to make you question whether leaving was the right decision. Strong enough to make you romanticize what you left behind, to remember only the good parts while minimizing the pain, the confusion, the misalignment that led to the separation in the first place. But this is where you must be careful, because not everything that feels familiar is meant to be revisited. Not everything that once held meaning is meant to hold a place in your future. There are old relationships that you have been tempted to reconnect with, people whose presence once felt significant, whose absence left a space that you noticed. And in moments of reflection, you may have considered reaching out, reopening doors that were closed, revisiting conversations that ended, trying to rebuild something that once existed. But you have to ask yourself, why was it removed? Why did it end? Why did the distance form in the first place? Because relationships that are aligned with your growth do not need to be forced back into place. They evolve naturally. They support your direction. They remain consistent with who you are becoming. But relationships that were removed often carried something that was not meant to continue. Whether it was misunderstanding, imbalance, lack of support, or a misalignment of purpose. And going back to them without recognizing that truth does not restore what was lost. It reintroduces what was already proven to be unsustainable. And then there are the patterns, the habits, the cycles that you have been working to break, even if you didn't fully realize it at the time. The ways of thinking, the behaviors, the coping mechanisms that once felt normal but were quietly limiting your growth, patterns that kept you in the same situations, the same emotional states, the same outcomes, repeating over and over again. And now that you have been pulled out of those patterns, there may be moments where you feel the urge to return to them, not because they are right, but because they are familiar, because they require less effort, because they do not challenge you to grow beyond what you already know. But returning to those patterns means returning to the same results. It means stepping back into cycles that you have already outgrown, cycles that no longer align with the direction you are moving in. And that is why the warning is so clear. Do not go back. Not because you are incapable of handling it, but because you are no longer meant to be there. And perhaps the most subtle and dangerous pull is the pull toward familiar pain, the kind of pain that you have learned to tolerate, the kind that feels almost comfortable because you understand it, because you know how it works, because you have experienced it before. It may sound strange, but the mind often prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. Because growth requires uncertainty. It requires stepping into something new, something untested, something that does not come with guarantees. And in those moments, the past can seem easier, even if it was painful, even if it limited you, even if it held you back. Because at least it was known. At least it was predictable. But what feels familiar is not always what is right, and what feels comfortable is not always what is aligned. This is where the tension between emotion and truth becomes clear. Emotion tells you to go back, to reconnect, to revisit, to return to what you know. Emotion reminds you of the good moments, the comfort, the sense of belonging, even if it was incomplete. But spiritual truth tells you something different. It reminds you of why you had to leave. It reminds you of what you felt when you were there, the confusion, the heaviness, the sense that something was not right. It reminds you of the growth that has already taken place since you stepped away, the clarity that has emerged, the strength that has been developed. And this is where your discernment becomes essential, because you have to choose which voice to follow, the voice of temporary emotion or the voice of lasting truth. And the more you choose truth, the stronger your alignment becomes, the clearer your path becomes, the less power those old attachments have over you. And when you understand this fully, you begin to see separation differently. You begin to see that what was removed was not taken to punish you, but to protect you. Protection does not always feel comfortable. It does not always feel like relief in the moment. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like distance. Sometimes it feels like being pulled away from something you thought you needed. But over time, you begin to see the purpose behind it. You begin to see what you were being shielded from, what you were being guided away from, what you were being preserved for. Because not everything you lose is meant to be regained. Some things are meant to be left behind permanently, not because they had no value, but because their time in your life has ended. And holding on to them beyond that point only delays your growth, only keeps you connected to a version of yourself that you are no longer meant to be. This is why this warning matters so much right now, because you are at a point where you have enough awareness to recognize the difference, but you still have the freedom to choose. You can move forward into alignment, into clarity, into what is being prepared for you. Or you can look back and be pulled into what has already been removed. And the choice you make here will shape what comes next. So do not ignore this. Do not dismiss it as something small or insignificant. Because returning to what was removed does not bring restoration. It brings repetition. It brings you back into cycles that you have already been freed from. But moving forward, even when it feels uncertain, even when it requires letting go completely, brings you into something new, something aligned, something that reflects the growth that has already taken place within you. And that is where you are being led. Not backward, but forward. Not into what was, but into what is being prepared. And trusting that direction, even when it is difficult, is what keeps you protected, what keeps you aligned, and what allows you to fully step into the next chapter that is already beginning to unfold in your life. And now, something undeniable is happening within you. Something that can no longer be ignored or pushed aside. Something that marks the beginning of a completely new level of awareness in your life. Your awakening has begun. Not in a distant, abstract way, not as an idea or a concept, but as a real, active shift taking place inside your spirit right now. You may not have the perfect words to describe it yet, but you can feel it. There is a difference in how you perceive things, a difference in how you respond, a difference in how deeply you sense what is right and what is not. This is not the same version of you that was navigating through confusion, through distraction, through uncertainty without clarity. Something has changed. Something has been activated. Your spirit is waking up. And when your spirit begins to wake up, it does not happen quietly or passively. It begins to bring things into focus that you once overlooked. It begins to highlight what is aligned and what is not. It begins to create a sensitivity within you that notices shifts, energies, intentions, and patterns with a level of awareness you did not have before. You start to feel things more clearly, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that guides you. Situations that once felt neutral now feel distinct. You can sense when something is right for you and when something is off, even if everything looks fine on the surface. And that is because your discernment is sharpening. This is one of the most powerful aspects of your awakening, because discernment is what allows you to navigate your path with precision. It is what helps you distinguish between what appears good and what is truly aligned. It is what prevents you from falling into the same traps, the same cycles, the same patterns that once held you back. Before, you may have relied heavily on logic alone, on what made sense externally, on what seemed acceptable or expected. But now, there is a deeper layer guiding you, a knowing that does not always come with explanation, but proves itself through consistency and accuracy over time. You begin to trust your instincts more, not blindly, but with a growing confidence that what you are sensing is valid, that it is leading you in the right direction. And alongside this sharpened discernment, you begin to feel something else returning. Your strength. Not just physical or emotional strength, but a deeper, more grounded strength that comes from alignment. The kind of strength that does not depend on external validation, that does not collapse under pressure, that remains steady even when circumstances are uncertain. This strength was always within you, but it may have felt distant at times, especially when you were drained, when you were confused, when you were caught in cycles that weakened your focus and your energy. But now, as those layers begin to fall away, as clarity takes their place, that strength begins to rise again. You feel more stable within yourself, more certain of who you are and what you are moving toward, less easily shaken by opinions, by distractions, by temporary challenges. And this is not something you have to force. It is something that emerges naturally as you come back into alignment with your true path. And as your spirit wakes up, your discernment sharpens, and your strength returns, there is a transformation taking place in how you connect with guidance. You begin to hear more clearly, not necessarily in a loud or dramatic way, but in a consistent, steady way that becomes easier to recognize. The noise that once clouded your perception begins to fade. The confusion that once made everything feel uncertain begins to lift. And in that space, you begin to recognize direction more easily. You begin to understand what you are being led toward and what you are being led away from. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now feel more straightforward. Not because every detail is known, but because the direction is clear. You no longer feel the need to question every step. You begin to move with trust, with a sense of alignment that reassures you even when the full picture is not visible. And because of that clarity, you begin to avoid traps faster. Situations that once would have pulled you in now stand out immediately as misaligned. You recognize patterns before they fully develop. You sense intentions before they are fully revealed. You notice red flags early, not after you have already become entangled. And this ability to recognize and respond quickly is not something to take lightly. It is a form of protection. It is a result of your awareness expanding, your discernment becoming active, your connection to guidance becoming stronger. You are no longer learning through repeated mistakes. You are learning through recognition, through awareness, through understanding. And that changes how you move entirely. Because instead of reacting after something has already affected you, you begin to respond before it has the chance to. You step around what would have once slowed you down. You redirect before you lose time or energy. You protect your peace, your focus, your direction with a level of intention that was not fully present before. And as all of this comes together, something else becomes evident in your presence. Confidence. Not forced confidence, not something you have to convince yourself of, but a natural confidence that comes from knowing you are aligned, knowing you are aware, knowing you are not moving blindly anymore. This confidence is quiet, but it is powerful. It shows in how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, how you set boundaries, how you move forward without needing constant reassurance. You begin to trust the process, not because everything is perfect, but because you understand what is happening on a deeper level. You understand that you are not being left to figure everything out alone. You are being guided, and you can feel that guidance more clearly now. And this is why this moment matters so much. Because this is not just a phase. This is not something temporary that will pass and leave you where you started. This is a turning point. A moment where your awareness has shifted enough that you cannot go back to the same level of perception you had before. You cannot unknow what you now understand. You cannot ignore what you now recognize. And that is a powerful place to be, because it means your path forward is no longer based on guesswork or uncertainty. It is based on alignment. It is based on clarity. It is based on a connection that is becoming stronger with every step you take. This is the beginning of a new way of moving, a new way of thinking, a new way of responding to what life presents to you. And as you continue forward, this awakening will continue to deepen. Your discernment will continue to sharpen. Your strength will continue to grow. Your clarity will continue to expand. And the more you embrace it, the more you trust it, the more you act in alignment with it, the more your path will unfold in ways that reflect the transformation that is already taking place within you. This is not something to question. This is something to recognize, something to step into fully. Because this is your moment, your turning point, the moment where everything begins to change, not just around you, but within you, in a way that will shape everything that comes next. And now you arrive at the moment where everything that once felt uncertain begins to settle into something firm, something undeniable, something that does not waver the way it used to. This is not just a continuation of what you have been through. This is a shift into something entirely different. A line has been crossed. Whether you fully realize it yet or not, the season you are in, the one marked by delay, by stagnation, by confusion, has reached its end. Not gradually fading, not lingering in the background, but ending with intention. Delay is over. The waiting that felt endless, the pauses that didn't make sense, the feeling of being held back no matter how much effort you put in. That season has completed its purpose. It can no longer define your movement. It can no longer dictate your pace. Because what once felt like you were being stopped was actually you being positioned. And now that positioning is complete. Stagnation is over. The sense of being stuck, of repeating cycles, of moving without progress, of trying without seeing results, that weight is lifting. You are no longer in a place where your energy is being contained or restricted. Movement is returning, not in a chaotic or overwhelming way, but in a steady, aligned flow that reflects everything you have learned and everything you have become. And confusion is over. The fog that clouded your thoughts, that made everything feel uncertain, that caused you to question yourself again and again. That fog is clearing. Not partially, not temporarily, but with a clarity that allows you to see your path with a new level of understanding. You are no longer guessing. You are no longer second-guessing every step. You are seeing, recognizing, and moving with awareness. And with this shift comes something even more powerful. Promise. Not vague hope, not distant possibility, but clear, intentional promise that speaks directly to what you have experienced and what is now being restored. What you lost will be restored. Not necessarily in the exact form it once took, because not everything that was lost is meant to return in the same way, but in value, in meaning, in alignment. The time you thought was wasted, the opportunities you thought you missed, the energy you gave in places that did not return it, none of it was in vain. It is being accounted for, and it is being restored in ways that align with where you are now, not where you were then. What you missed will be replaced. Every moment where you felt like you were behind, like you were late, like others were moving ahead while you remained stuck, those moments are being rebalanced. Because you were never truly behind, you were being prepared. And now, what you thought you missed is being brought back to you in a form that matches your growth, your awareness, your readiness. You are not catching up. You are stepping into something that has been aligned specifically for you, something that could not have arrived before now, because you were not yet in the position to receive it fully. And what was delayed will be accelerated. This is where the shift becomes undeniable, because acceleration does not just bring you back to where you were supposed to be. It moves you forward with a momentum that surpasses the delay. Things begin to happen in ways that feel different, faster, more aligned. Connections, opportunities, insights begin to come together in a way that reflects timing, not randomness. You begin to see doors opening that were once closed, paths becoming clear that were once hidden, progress happening in areas that once felt completely still. And this acceleration is not something you have to force. It is something you step into by remaining aligned with what has already been revealed to you. Because when divine timing takes over, it does not require struggle to move forward. It requires awareness, trust, and willingness to act when the moment calls for it. And this is where the victory becomes clear. Because when you look back at everything you went through, the delays, the distractions, the confusion, the pressure, the unseen battles, you begin to understand something that changes your entire perspective. The enemy did not win. It never had the power to take what was meant for you permanently. It never had the authority to cancel your path, to remove your purpose, to stop your progress completely. All it could do was buy time, time filled with distraction, time filled with confusion, time filled with resistance. But time has limits, and now that time is up. The delay served its purpose, but it does not continue. The resistance was real, but it does not remain. The confusion was present, but it does not define you anymore, because you have moved beyond it. You have reached a point where what once slowed you down can no longer control your direction. And that realization is powerful, because it removes the weight of everything you thought you lost. It removes the fear that you were too late, that you missed your moment, that you cannot recover what was delayed. because now you see that your moment was never lost. It was simply waiting for the right alignment. And now that alignment is here. And as you step into this new season, you begin to move differently. You no longer carry the hesitation that once held you back. You no longer operate from a place of uncertainty or fear. You move with confidence, with clarity, with a sense of purpose that reflects everything you have come to understand. You recognize opportunities when they appear. You respond to guidance when it is given. You trust your discernment when it signals you. And in doing so, you align yourself with the acceleration that is already in motion. This is not about rushing. This is not about forcing things to happen quickly. This is about moving in sync with a timing that is already unfolding, a timing that is designed to bring everything together in the right way, at the right moment, for the right purpose. And the more you align with that timing, the more you will see how everything begins to connect. How what once felt separate now fits together. How what once felt delayed now arrives with precision. How what once felt uncertain now becomes clear and steady. This is the end of delay. This is the end of stagnation. This is the end of confusion, not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because you are no longer in the same state of awareness you were before. You are no longer navigating blindly. You are no longer disconnected from what is being revealed to you. You are present. You are aware. You are aligned. And that changes everything. Because when you are aligned, what is meant for you does not have to fight to reach you. It flows toward you. It connects with you. It becomes part of your path in a way that feels natural, even if it is new. And that is what is happening now. The shift is not coming, it is here. The change is not approaching, it has begun. And you are not waiting for it. You are stepping into it, fully, consciously, intentionally. This is your moment of movement, your moment of restoration, your moment of acceleration. And nothing that tried to delay you has the power to stop what is unfolding now. And now you stand at the threshold of something entirely new. Not a continuation of what was, but the beginning of what has been prepared for you all along. This is your new spiritual chapter, and the most important truth you must recognize in this moment is this. You did not arrive here by accident. You were led here intentionally. Every delay, every redirection, every moment of confusion, every experience that felt like a detour was actually part of a precise movement guiding you to this exact point. Even when it didn't make sense, even when it felt like you were off track, there was an unseen alignment taking place, positioning you step by step, decision by decision, toward this moment of awareness. You were being led, even when you didn't realize it. You were being guided, even when you felt uncertain. And now, as everything becomes clearer, you can begin to see that your path has never been random. It has always been intentional, even when it was difficult to understand. And because of that, this new chapter you are stepping into is not built on confusion or hesitation. It is built on clarity. A clarity that does not fade the way it used to. A clarity that does not disappear under pressure or doubt, but remains steady, grounded, and accessible. You begin to see your direction more clearly, not just in the big decisions, but in the small, everyday choices that shape your path. You recognize what aligns with you and what does not, without needing constant validation. You move with a sense of knowing that comes from within, a knowing that has been strengthened through everything you have experienced. And this clarity becomes your foundation. It becomes the lens through which you view everything moving forward. No longer clouded, no longer uncertain, but focused and intentional. Alongside this clarity, there is something else that becomes more present in your life. Protection. Not in a way that removes all challenges,
but in a way that ensures you are not moving blindly into situations that are not meant for you. You begin to notice how certain things no longer reach you the way they used to, how situations that once would have pulled you in now pass by without affecting you, how you are guided away from what is not aligned before it has the chance to disrupt your peace. This protection is not always loud or obvious, but it is consistent. It is present in the doors that remain closed, in the delays that no longer frustrate you because you understand their purpose, in the subtle redirections that keep you aligned with where you are meant to be. And as you become more aware of this protection, you begin to trust it. You stop forcing what is not opening. You stop chasing what is not aligned. You allow yourself to move with the understanding that what is meant for you will not require you to fight against your own peace to obtain it.
And then there is your discernment, now sharper than it has ever been. This is one of the defining characteristics of this new chapter, because it changes how you interact with everything around you. You no longer rely solely on appearances or words. You sense what is beneath the surface. You recognize intentions, patterns, and energies with a level of awareness that protects you from being misled or manipulated. And this discernment is not something you question the way you once did. It is something you trust, because it has proven itself to you. It has shown you what is right and what is not, what is aligned and what is not, what is worth your time and energy and what is not. And as you continue to trust it, it becomes even stronger. It becomes a constant guide, helping you navigate your path with precision and confidence. And with clarity, protection, and discernment all working together, something else becomes firmly established within you. Your strength. Not the kind of strength that is reactive, that only appears when you are pushed to your limits, but a steady, grounded strength that exists regardless of what is happening around you. This strength comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are, what you have been through, and what you are now capable of. It is not shaken by temporary setbacks or external opinions. It remains steady, allowing you to move forward with confidence, even when the path ahead is still unfolding. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself in the same way. You no longer feel the need to seek validation from places that cannot truly provide it. You stand in your own understanding, your own awareness, your own alignment. And that changes how you carry yourself, how you respond, how you move through every situation you encounter. And as all of this comes together, there is a final transformation that defines this new chapter completely. There is no more backtracking. Not because you are being forced forward, but because you have outgrown what is behind you. The desire to return to old patterns, old relationships, old ways of thinking begins to fade, not through resistance, but through realization. You see clearly why those things could not continue. You understand why they were removed. And because of that understanding, you no longer feel pulled toward them in the same way. The attachment loosens. The need to revisit what has already been completed disappears, and you begin to move forward without looking back, not out of denial, but out of clarity, because you know that what lies ahead is not a repetition of the past, but a continuation of your growth. Your path forward has changed, not slightly, not temporarily, but fundamentally. You are not walking the same road with the same mindset, the same awareness, the same level of understanding. You are walking a new path, one that reflects everything you have learned, everything you have overcome, everything you have become. And this path is not defined by confusion or delay. It is defined by alignment, by purpose, by a sense of direction that continues to unfold with each step you take. And as you move forward, you carry with you everything that this process has given you. The awareness that allows you to recognize what is real, the strength that allows you to stand firm in your decisions, the clarity that guides your direction, the protection that keeps you aligned. The discernment that helps you navigate every situation with precision. This is your new foundation. This is what supports you as you step into everything that is ahead. And this is why this moment matters so much. Because you are not the same person you were when this journey began. You have changed. You have grown. You have awakened to something deeper, something stronger, something more aligned with your true path. And now, as you stand at the beginning of this new chapter, you are not stepping into the unknown without guidance. You are stepping forward with everything you need already within you. And that is what makes this chapter different. That is what makes it powerful. That is what makes it yours. And now, after everything that has been revealed, everything that has been uncovered, everything that has shifted within you, there is one final message that settles over this moment with clarity and authority. I have spoken. Walk in it. Not later, not when it feels more comfortable, not when every detail is perfectly clear, but now. Because what you have received is not just information, it is instruction. It is direction. It is activation. This is the point where understanding must become action, where awareness must turn into movement. Because hearing without responding keeps you in the same place, but obedience moves you into alignment with what has already been prepared for you. And obedience is not about perfection. It is about willingness. It is about choosing to trust what has been revealed, even when it challenges your privileged linear, even when it requires you to step beyond what feels familiar. This is not just content you listened to and moved on from. This is a moment that marks a shift, a moment that calls you to respond intentionally, and your response matters. If this message reached you, if it stirred something within you, don't ignore that. Acknowledge it, seal it. You can respond in a simple way, by engaging, by liking, by sharing this message with someone who needs to hear it, by staying connected so you don't miss what is meant to guide you next. But more than that, respond with your life. Respond with your decisions. Respond with your willingness to walk differently, to choose differently, to move forward with clarity and conviction. Because you are not walking this path alone. You are guided in ways you are only beginning to fully understand. You are protected in ways you may not always see, but will come to recognize over time. And you are supported by something greater than your current circumstances. So as you leave this moment, carry this truth with you. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where you need to be, stepping into what has been prepared for you. Stay aligned, stay aware, stay open. And remember, no matter what unfolds next, no matter what challenges arise or what changes come, you are not alone. God is with you.